She only wanted peace, a fragile little girl trapped in a world too loud, too confusing, too cruel. And then came a janitor, a man most people ignored. With nothing but a bottle of bubbles, he offered her something no one else did: calm. But what seemed like a simple, quiet act of kindness was about to uncover something much bigger. Because in the shadows, someone was watching. Someone powerful. Someone who would never forget what she saw that day. This isn't just about bubbles. It isn't just about a child. It's about how society sees people based on their skin, their job, their worth. And it's about what happens when the most overlooked man in the room suddenly becomes the most unforgettable. What unfolded next would shake an entire family, and force everyone to ask, in a world still divided, who do we choose to see, and who do we choose to ignore? It was another long day at the school. The halls had emptied, the chatter of children replaced by silence and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. For most, the day was over. But for him, the janitor, work was only just beginning. His name was Samuel, a quiet, steady man whose presence was barely noticed by those who passed him in the corridors. To many, he was invisible. Just a uniform, a broom, and a skin color that made him easy to dismiss. Yet beneath that silence was a man who carried dignity in every step. He swept, polished, and repaired not just for a paycheck, but with the pride of someone who believed even the smallest tasks mattered. Every classroom he cleaned, every floor he mopped, he treated like a responsibility he was honored to carry. But outside those walls, Samuel's reality was different. The world reminded him daily of where it thought he belonged, through stairs that lingered too long, doors that closed too quickly, and whispers that followed him when he walked into the wrong spaces. He didn't complain. He didn't fight back. He just worked harder, believing that one day kindness would be enough to outweigh judgment. And then came her. A little girl, fragile, lost in her own world, her tiny hands clutching the air as though reaching for something unseen. She would cross Samuel's path in a way no one could have predicted. And what began as a fleeting moment of compassion would soon unravel into a story that challenged wealth, race, and the quiet prejudices people carry in their hearts. Because sometimes, it takes the simplest act to expose the harshest truths. Samuel's life had always followed a rhythm. Clean the halls. Empty the bins. Lock the doors. Leave quietly before anyone noticed. He had grown used to being invisible, even comfortable with it. But all of that shifted the day he crossed paths with the little girl. She was sitting alone in the corner of the playground after class had ended. Other children ran home, laughing, chasing each other under the warm afternoon sun. But she didn't join them. Her eyes darted around, unsettled by every sound. A shrill laugh. The slam of a locker. Even the wind seemed to unsettle her fragile world. Her hands pressed against her ears, as though shutting out a storm no one else could hear. Samuel paused, mop still in his hands. He had seen her before, always quiet, always apart. Teachers whispered about her in the staff lounge, using words he only half understood: autistic, sensory overload, special needs. Words that made her sound fragile, broken. But to Samuel, she was just a child, lost, frightened, and alone. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket. It was a habit he carried from his own childhood, a small bottle of soap bubbles, something simple that had once calmed him on his darkest days. He uncapped it, dipped the wand, and gently blew. The bubbles floated through the air, catching the sunlight like tiny rainbows. They danced and shimmered, rising, falling, vanishing into the breeze. The little girl's eyes widened. Her hands dropped from her ears. For the first time that day, her face softened. She reached out, tiny fingers stretching toward the floating magic. Samuel smiled faintly, relief washing over him. It worked. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that eyes were watching. From the upper window of the administration building, a woman sat frozen in her chair. Perfectly styled hair. Designer clothes. Jewelry that glimmered even in the fading light. She was the kind of woman who carried an aura of power, the kind that made others stand taller, speak softer, and never dare to question her. She was the girl's mother. And she was worth more than Samuel could ever imagine. Yet in that moment, she wasn't a billionaire. She wasn't untouchable. She was just a mother, seeing her daughter calm for the first time in weeks. And the man responsible was not the expensive doctors she had hired, not the elite therapists she had flown in from across the country, but the janitor. Still, not everyone watching saw kindness. Across the yard, a security guard narrowed his eyes. To him, Samuel wasn't calming a child. He was a black man hovering too close, stepping out of line. His radio crackled as his hand hovered near it, suspicion etched across his face. The following days grew tense. Word spread quickly in whispers through the staff. Did you hear? The janitor was playing with the girl. Some teachers smiled, thinking it was sweet. Others frowned, muttering that it was inappropriate or unprofessional. The head administrator called Samuel into his office, his tone sharp, his gaze heavy. We don't pay you to play, Samuel. You're here to clean. Stay in your lane. The words cut deeper than the man realized. Stay in your lane. As if compassion had boundaries. As if kindness had rules. Samuel nodded silently, swallowing the ache in his chest, but the warning echoed in his mind long after he left the office. And yet, the girl kept finding him. She lingered in the hallways when she knew he would be nearby. She peeked into the storage closet, waiting for the moment he might pull out that bottle again. And whenever the bubbles floated, her world stilled. She laughed, a sound so pure it softened even Samuel's tired heart. But each moment they shared carried a shadow. Every laugh, every bubble, every flicker of peace in the girl's eyes was watched, sometimes by the staff, sometimes by the guard, and once again by her mother. Then came the day it all went wrong. A group of boys lingered near the lockers, older, crueler, their laughter sharp as broken glass. They noticed the girl first, quiet, alone, clutching her backpack too tightly. Their voices turned mocking, their words laced with venom. What's wrong with you? Why don't you talk? Freak. The girl froze, her body trembling, her eyes darting like a trapped bird. And just as the tears welled, Samuel appeared, mop in hand, gaze steady. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply stepped between the girl and the boys, his presence alone a barrier. Go, he said quietly. The boys hesitated, but only for a moment. They laughed, spat insults under their breath, and scattered down the hall. The girl clung to the hem of Samuel's shirt, eyes filled with gratitude and fear. But the wrong person turned the corner at the wrong time. The head administrator. His eyes narrowed at the sight, a janitor standing too close to a vulnerable student. His mind didn't see protection. He saw a breach of conduct. Within hours, Samuel was summoned again. This time, the tone was harsher, the words colder. Boundaries. Professionalism. Inappropriate. The warning carried teeth now, sharp enough to tear at the fragile dignity Samuel had left. He left the office that night with the weight of judgment pressing down on him, heavier than any mop or bucket he had ever carried. The whispers grew louder in the days that followed. Eyes followed him in the halls, suspicion etched into every glance. Still, the girl sought him out. Still, he brought out the bubbles, risking everything for her fleeting peace. And still, someone was watching. The mother. From her sleek black car, from her hidden vantage points, from behind tinted windows. She saw it all, the laughter, the kindness, the way this man treated her daughter not as a problem, not as a burden, but as a child. Her heart warred with her status. Should she intervene? Should she stop it? Should she thank him? Or would the world see it differently? Would they say she allowed her daughter to bond with a janitor, a black man whose kindness society refused to value? The tension grew, thread by thread, until it was ready to snap. Because one day, the girl disappeared from the playground. The staff searched frantically, voices sharp with panic. And when they found her, sitting calmly beside Samuel, surrounded by bubbles, the storm erupted. The security guard's radio blared. The administrator's voice rose like thunder. And Samuel stood frozen, caught between innocence and accusation, kindness and condemnation. He had no idea that this moment would decide his future. And he had no idea that the most powerful person in the building, the billionaire mother, was about to step out of the shadows. Samuel's hands shook as he gripped the mop handle. The hallway was no longer silent, it was charged, alive with whispers, accusations, and suspicion. Teachers avoided his gaze. Students pointed when they thought he wasn't looking. The security guard shadowed his every move, waiting, almost hungry for him to make a mistake. It should have been a small moment, just bubbles in the air, a child's laughter, but it had grown into something much darker. The day it all came crashing down began like any other. Samuel arrived before sunrise, as he always did, sweeping the hallways while the school still slept. He told himself it would be a normal day. He told himself to keep his head low, follow orders, and avoid the girl. But the girl found him. Her small voice, almost a whisper, broke the silence of the corridor. Bubbles? Samuel froze. He didn't want to answer. He knew the consequences. But when he turned and saw her eyes, pleading, fragile, desperate for something so simple, his resolve crumbled. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the small bottle, and blew. Rainbow spheres floated through the hall, drifting weightless against the dull white walls. The girl's face lit up, laughter spilling into the air like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. For a moment, it was just joy. Just innocence. Then the storm hit. The administrator appeared at the end of the hall, eyes blazing, voice sharp as a whip. Samuel. Step away from her. The words echoed down the corridor. Doors opened. Teachers peered out. Students whispered. The guard's heavy boots thudded closer, radio already in hand. Samuel stood frozen, the bubble wand slipping from his fingers, falling soundlessly to the floor. The administrator's words cut through the silence. You've crossed a line. This is unacceptable. Inappropriate. You are finished here. The girl clung to Samuel's arm, tears spilling as she cried, "No. No." Her voice shook, but her grip tightened, refusing to let go. And then, it happened. The billionaire mother stepped forward. No longer hidden behind tinted windows or glass panes. She walked into the hallway, heels clicking against the floor like a judge entering a courtroom. The crowd parted. Teachers whispered her name. Some straightened their posture, their faces turning respectful, deferential. Power had arrived. Her eyes locked on Samuel. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. What she saw was not a threat, not misconduct, but a man, a black man, kneeling beside her child, the only person who had managed to reach her, to calm her. Her chest tightened as realization hit. All the expensive doctors, the elite schools, the endless wealth, none of it had given her daughter peace. But this man had. And yet, she said nothing. Not yet. The administrator continued, emboldened. You are terminated immediately. Security will escort you out. The guard stepped forward, hand brushing the cuffs at his belt. The crowd murmured. Students pulled out phones, recording. Samuel's heart pounded. His throat went dry. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but the words caught in his chest. Years of being told to stay silent, to stay in his lane, to keep his head down, they crushed him now. He could feel the weight of history pressing against his ribs. He had done nothing wrong. But he knew what they saw, a black janitor too close to a white child. The girl screamed, clinging tighter. Don't take him. Her cries pierced the hallway, raw and desperate, but the guard moved closer. His hand closed around Samuel's arm, firm, authoritative, rehearsed. Samuel flinched. Memories crashed over him, being pulled aside as a teenager, accused of shoplifting he never committed, stopped on streets for fitting a description. The same grip, the same suspicion, the same silent accusation. you don't belong here." The crowd's whispers grew. What did he do? Why was he with her? Is he dangerous? Dangerous. The word struck Samuel like a blade. Dangerous, for blowing bubbles? For protecting a child from bullies? For offering kindness where others gave none? He wanted to shout, to fight back, to tear through the invisible chains that bound him. But fear coiled tighter. He had seen what happened when men who looked like him resisted. Headlines. Mugshots. Funerals. So he stood still, his eyes stinging, his heart pounding. And then, another voice cut through the chaos. Firm. Clear. Commanding. Stop. The guard froze. The administrator blinked. Every eye turned to the billionaire mother. She stepped forward, placing herself between Samuel and the guard. Her hand rested gently on her daughter's shoulder, steadying her, grounding her. Her voice carried authority no one could ignore. Do not touch him. The hallway went silent. She looked around at the teachers, the students, the administrator, every face that had judged, whispered, assumed. Her gaze was sharp, unyielding. This man did what none of you could. He reached my daughter. He gave her peace. And you want to punish him for it? Shame on you. Gasps rippled through the hall. The administrator's face drained of color, but his lips still pressed into a thin, defiant line. The guard hesitated, his grip loosening on Samuel's arm. The mother's words sliced through the tension like a blade. You see a janitor. You see his skin. You see a role you think he should play. But I see the truth. I see a man with more compassion than this entire staff combined. Samuel's chest heaved, his throat thick with emotion. For the first time, someone powerful stood beside him, not against him. But the moment was not triumph, it was fire. Every gaze still burned into his skin. Every whisper still lingered. The girl tugged at her mother's sleeve, pointing at the bubbles still drifting faintly through the air. He makes me feel safe. And in that moment, the billionaire mother faced her choice. To side with comfort and silence, or to risk her reputation, her image, her standing, by defending the man no one else would. The hallway held its breath, suspended between justice and injustice, compassion and prejudice. Her next words would decide everything. The hallway held its breath, waiting for the mother's choice. And when she finally spoke, her voice carried not just authority, but a weight that silenced every whisper. She defended Samuel openly, her words dismantling the lies and assumptions that had threatened to destroy him. In that moment, the tide shifted. The guard lowered his hand. The administrator faltered. And Samuel, for the first time in his life, felt what it meant to be seen, not as a janitor, not as a stereotype, but as a human being. But resolution didn't come with applause or celebration. It came with silence. The kind of silence that forces people to confront themselves. Teachers avoided each other's eyes. Students tucked their phones away, uneasy about what they had captured. The administrator muttered excuses, but his authority had cracked in front of everyone. For Samuel, though, the damage was already carved deep. The humiliation of being accused, of being treated as dangerous for the crime of kindness, could not be erased with one mother's defense. He went home that night not triumphant, but exhausted, carrying the heavy truth that even when you do everything right, even when your heart is pure, the world can still turn on you because of the color of your skin. And yet, something had changed. The little girl's laughter had pierced the walls of prejudice. The mother's public stand had forced others to see what they tried to ignore. Samuel's act of compassion had exposed more than bias, it had revealed the deep injustice woven into the way society assigns value to people. Days later, word of the incident spread beyond the school. Parents talked. Students posted fragments online. And slowly, a conversation began, uncomfortable, messy, necessary. Some defended Samuel fiercely. Others muttered that the whole thing was blown out of proportion. But no one could deny what had happened. No one could erase the image of a black janitor being treated as a threat for comforting a child. For Samuel, the choice was clear. He could shrink back into silence, letting the world forget. Or he could stand in his truth, not as a victim, but as a witness. His life had been built in the shadows, invisible to those who never cared to look. Now, he had been thrust into the light. And in that light, the story wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever been judged by their skin instead of their soul. It belonged to the countless men and women who had been told to stay in their lane, who had been punished for daring to show compassion, who had been made to feel dangerous for simply existing. The girl never forgot him. For her, Samuel was not just the janitor, he was safety, he was calm, he was proof that kindness could break through even the hardest storms inside her mind. Her mother never forgot either. Wealth had given her power, but Samuel had given her something money could not buy, a glimpse of humanity at its purest. The incident faded from headlines, from gossip, from the restless churn of daily life. But the impact remained like an echo, rippling outward in ways no one could fully measure. Because the truth is this, racism does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers in warnings, in stares, in the quiet dismissal of a man who works hard but is never seen. Sometimes it hides in rules, in boundaries, in the belief that kindness can only come from certain people and not others. Samuel's story is not just about a hallway, a child, and a bottle of bubbles. It is about how quickly compassion can be twisted into suspicion when filtered through prejudice. It is about how fragile dignity can be when others refuse to recognize it. And it is about us. About the world we continue to build, one where a janitor can be treated as dangerous while a billionaire's voice is needed to make the truth heard. So the question remains, how many more Samuels will be silenced before we finally listen? How many more moments of kindness will be crushed under the weight of suspicion before we change? This story is not just his. It is ours. And the choice is the same for all of us, to turn away and let the whispers continue, or to stand, speak, and see the humanity we so often ignore. The bubbles may fade, but the truth remains. What will you do with it?